It looks like old Yeller has gone rabid. New report laying out how Joe Biden has been privately seething and growing, quote, angry and anxious about his reelection effort. So are we. Joe blowing his top off, shouting and swearing at his staff every time they show him poll numbers from critical battleground states where he's getting beaten by Trump. But the White House says he's keeping his cool.
There's a report that when President Biden was told his handling of the war between Israel and Hamas was starting to affect his poll numbers, the quote is, he began to shout and swear. So when he does that, is he shouting and swearing about Netanyahu or about Hamas or about his poll numbers?
This is the when did you stop beating your spouse question, because I don't think he ever did that. And so, well, you use that as the premise of your question, which is when he does that. I've never seen him do that, shout or swear in response to that. So from my perspective, that particular report is not correct.
Inflammatory language there. Another report spilling the beans on how Joe Biden can't stop thinking about Barack Obama. The big guy apparently ain't chit-chatting much with Barry these days, but behind closed doors, it's all he ever talks about. Biden even likes to boast about how, quote, Obama would be jealous when bragging about something he accomplished. But the White House denies there's a rift. All right, Dana, this is peculiar timing for a story like this. Who would float this? Why is this happening? Do you think it's real?
I felt like here we go again, another story leaked from inside the Biden campaign by friends of the Biden campaign who actually don't work for the Biden campaign. I don't mind. I wouldn't blame him for being mad at his campaign. What campaign exists? They're going to have plenty of money, but they could spend $100 million showing him running the 100-yard dash, and it's not going to change a single mind about how things are going. So when I read the headline that said he's mad about his campaign, I believe that because he knows that he is losing. So that told me, well, maybe he's more with it than you think. Like maybe he's looking at this going, guys, we're going to lose.
That's behind the story, right, Judge? It's to show that he's alert and alive.
Yes.
So it's totally made up to say that he's engaged when really he's not.
Well, I think he's cognitive enough to realize that he's in trouble. I really do. I mean, you know, his anger is both an outgrowth and a continuation of, remember with Charlemagne the God, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. It's kind of the Hillary Clinton coronation entitlement mentality. I am entitled to be your president. You have to vote for me. And so he's seething with anger, seething and shouting and swearing. And I'm surprised that Jake Sullivan, didn't know that. But look, Trump is beating him in all the swing states, and his numbers are so bad that any other president who had those numbers lost re-election. And so, I mean, the ending is clear. So here's the problem. He campaigned as a moderate. He was in a Trojan horse. He backed up the Trojan horse into the White House, and all the leftist minions ran into the White House. They're running the joint. And every time he says something that's almost real, they come out and clean it up. Okay, like Lincoln Riley to him, Lincoln Riley was killed by an illegal, okay? And then the minions run out and they clean it up. And the amazing part of this is he's losing. His White House advisors don't want to take any recommendations from anyone because we got this. We won it in 2020, which was totally unlike any election year, given the pandemic and where we were. But let that go. I have a different opinion. I think this guy's gotten elected for 50 years. He knows Washington. And you know what? When he said Lincoln Riley, he said, is killed by an illegal, he was being real. And I just have a feeling that if they stopped trying to progressive him and left him and then allowed him to go out and debate and be real out there, he might strike a chord of reality. I mean, I'm not saying, I hope this happens or I don't, but let the guy out. Let him swing for the fences. He's won for 50 years. Let him at it.
Harold, in the green room, we were talking about this rift between Obama and Joe Biden, and you said Joe is clearly a racist, and it disgusts you. I was very shocked at how angry you got.
Yeah.
You tipped over a platter of snacks.
Which, I like snacks. So
yes.
For me to trip over them is a tough thing. I got to look at the cameras on that one to make sure. Look, re-election campaigns are stirring affairs. I think about the re-elections of candidates since I've been able to vote in presidential races that have won. I look at Clinton And it took him a minute in his reelection campaign to find his way. And he finally said prosperity and the economy. Those of you that don't like all this prosperity, then don't vote for me. Which part of the prosperity don't you like? President Bush, you guys did something against Kerry, I thought, that was powerful, in that you said the country's not been attacked since 9/11. You can say what you want to say about what we've done, what we've not done, how we've done it, but the country is safer. President Obama went after then Governor Romney and Speaker or Leader Ryan at the time, Paul Ryan, said they're going to cut Social Security and Medicare. And that resonated. You find yourself this time, and I'll take the 2020 race out for a moment, President Trump's reelection campaign, and just go right to where we are. They've got to find their voice. And I think you're right. You got to let a candidate be a candidate. And certainly if the candidate's won a lot and has been around a lot, I got to think frustrated because he thinks that Biden thinks that all the things they've invested in America, that everyday Americans should be experiencing it. I've said all along, if people don't feel like they're doing well, but the data says they're doing well, or people don't feel safe in their communities, but the police data says they should, you're not going to win with that message. So they've got to find their way. And I think, I'm not surprised, but I don't necessarily, these allegations about things happening behind the scenes in campaigns, I don't necessarily find believable. However, I do find believable he's trying to find his way. And he's got several weeks to do it. And when he does, it's going to be one heck of a race.
Not very good at finding his way. We've seen the tape. Jesse, any truth to the rumor that Biden made a peace offering to Obama by sending the dog Commander in a food basket?
Because he likes to eat dog, Barack Obama.
Thank you for
I just want to make sure the audience knows he admitted to eating dog in Indonesia.
Yes,
as a youth.
That is true.
And we're on primetime tonight going to be covering Barack Obama's secret trip to Europe. He's meeting with Belgium royalty and the British Prime Minister. What's that all about? We'll be digging deep into that later this evening. The president has to be able to sell his success, and it's his agenda. He enacted it. He can't sell it because he's not a great wordsmith, but there's not a lot of great things to sell. You've been talking about how most of these jobs that have been created are for immigrants. We just found out today, all of the jobs created last year were part-time jobs. And you've said recently, all the spending that he's done, whether it's COVID or in the environment, that's what's created the inflation. And the inflation's getting worse. Yeah. They're having a lot of trouble getting inflation under control, so they might not even be able to cut rates leading up to this. So they told him, you're going to probably lose Georgia and Arizona. That's why he was cursing. That means he has to sweep the Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and he's down in every state. Right. I'd be cursing people out, too. But it's really not their fault. It's his.
Excellent point, Jesse.
Thank you, Greg.
All right, ahead, censorship showdown at the Supreme Court. Your freedom of speech could be in danger.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.